Members were formed. A quorum and is already the appointed time. May I call the meeting to order? The first item on the agenda is confirmation of minutes of our meeting held on the 9th of March 2015. The minutes have been circulated to members and no proposals for amendments have been received. If there are none, then may I confirm the minutes. Information papers issued since the last meeting. We've got two from the Secretariat, one from Ms. Claudia Mo and the other from Mr. Christopher CHUNG. We are going to discuss the issue raised by Ms. Mo in her letter. As regards Mr. Christopher CHUNG's question, the Secretariat has asked the administration to give us a reply relating to the award granting criteria of the Hong Kong ICT Awards. So let's wait till we see the response from the administration first. The agenda for our next meeting dated the 8th of June 2015 at 2:30. Madam Chair, you mentioned my letter. Yes, we will deal with it after we have confirmed our regular meeting agenda, okay? The next meeting is scheduled for the 8th of June 2015 at room 3, 2:30. And the first proposal is progress update on the e-government development, item 1 on the list of outstanding items. Second, consultation on the review of conditions in carrier licenses other than exclusive licenses issued under the Telecommunications Ordinance. Number 8 on our list. Do members have no objection? If not, then that will be the agenda for our next meeting. Now we come to Ms. Claudia Mo's letter to me dated the 23rd of April on issues relating to a change of the shareholding structure of the Broadcasting Limited and its applications for renewal of the domestic free TV program service license. Ms. Mo. Thank you. The controversy over the granting of domestic free TV program service license is still very great in Hong Kong, and that change in shareholding structure was not known at all before it was first heard, and it was said that some communist capital might be injected into TVB, although there will not be major changes in the shareholding structure of the limited, but new shareholders have been included in their board subsequently. So I query, under what circumstances will the CA approves such changes, because airwaves are part of our public resources, public assets. So will LegCo have the opportunity to vet such changes? And surprisingly, we haven't got any reply from the administration. I was thinking they would give me a written reply. Perhaps it doesn't know how to. Gradually, our TV industry is becoming like the mainland. Deputy Chairman. Well, it's hard for us to speculate when there are changes in the shareholders of a TV company, and it's hard for us to convene a special meeting on that particularly. So, Chairman, may I suggest that we write a letter to the administration asking for an explanation? Because, of course, that company has got a license and plays an important social function, but we should first ascertain the flexibility allowed in shareholding changes, so that we can tell whether it was a normal or exceptional change before we do anything to follow up, because it's hard for us to speculate on the background of the new shareholder. To do so would not be realistic, but since we have concerns from a member, let's write to the administration asking for an explanation first. Any other comments? On 22nd of April, the CA issued a press release announcing its approval for the change of the shareholding structure, and the intermediary and the shareholding company remain the same. As a listed company, I don't think it's possible for us to inform us or the world beforehand, before it has any changes in its shareholding. So I agree to our deputy chairman. Let's write to the administration for a response first. Now, this is not just a listed company and a decision, a commercial decision of the listed company, because this is a company operating with public airwaves. For instance, when we discuss whether there is anything wrong with the administration broadcasting political advertisements during API slots, and it's strange that no one in this council find anything special in this matter, with the exception of myself. So I agree with the Deputy Chairman. We should write to the administration first. Mr. Mok. Well, in fact, I have strong views. I support Ms. Claudia Mo in taking this matter forward. I agree that we should wait for the administration to give us a reply first before we decide what to do, because there are a lot of issues waiting to be discussed. The allocation of spectrum, allocation of licenses, so on and so forth. And it was reported yesterday that when Wing-Sing make an application, it was interested in the spectrum as well. So I agree that we may have to convene a special meeting to discuss the related licensing issues. It may be too late by the time we come back after the summer recess. Now, we understand that there are players at the market which wants the spectrum being used by ATV now. So before we break up for the summer in June or July, we must discuss this. Well, since this is not on our list of outstanding items, not on our agenda, I haven't allocated too much time for this. 2 or 3 members have raised their hands, and I'll draw a line after that. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Ms. Sit Ho, and Mr. Mr. Yu Xi-wing. For granting of TV licenses, it is even more important, and the arrangement of allocation of spectrum before license renewal, and just reallocation of ATV's spectrum, and together with Ms. Claudia Mo's suggestion, we should convene a special meeting, not just to discuss Ms. Mo's concern, but also all policies involving TV licenses. There is an urgency. Ms. Sito, agree that the licensing issue is an important matter, because we don't know when ATV will failed to pay its staff again. So I hope that we can convene a special meeting in June ASAP. This is not like the other list, not like the other items on our list, because things are developing very rapidly. Mr. Yu. Now we are discussing Ms. Claudia Mo's issue, the so-called communist capitalists joining the shareholders of ATV. I think we should focus on that first and do not associate it with too many other things. Let's deal with the issues one by one. Okay, then we'll first write to the administration and the agenda proper now. The first item is report from the Cyberport project. Let's invite the representatives of Cyberport and the administration to join us now. Let us welcome Ms. Susie Ho, Permanent Secretary, Ms. Joey Lam, Deputy Government Chief Government Officer, Mr. Herman Lam, CEO, Mr. Mark Lift, Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Pagan Wong, Chief Financial Officer of Hong Kong Cyberport Management Company Limited. I understand that you've prepared a PowerPoint presentation, so please be brief and leave as much time for members' questions as far as possible. Which one from the team, please? Mr. Lam. Mr. Lam. Chairman. First, we are grateful to this opportunity to report to members what Cyberport has done in the past year in the promotion of ICT. We have already submitted a paper to members and we have turned it into a PowerPoint presentation so as to briefly walk members through the paper. First, there are three big areas in the promotion of ICT. Promotion in the development of the industry. I think there is a cycle. At the first stage, we want to nurture new blood, young talents. We want to start this with students so that they can come to contact with ICT and they can develop an interest for the subject. The second stage is when they have developed an interest in this industry, of course they can work in well-established companies and they can also have their own startup companies. So I'd like to say what we have done at this stage to support our entrepreneurs. And the third stage is after a company is up and running, of course, it wants to develop, it wants to develop its market and find new investors. And I also like to report to you what we are doing in this regard. First, the first stage, communication with the younger generation to provide them with information of ICT and to share with them our experience and give them opportunities to get to know us. First, we have an internship programs. Last year, 74 students took part in our local and overseas programs. Some went to bigger IT companies, some to startups. Now, these programs are for secondary school children in particular.
They can garner first-hand experience. Lately, people have been talking about starting their own business, but they might not understand what the details are involved. So this project gives students a good opportunity where they can work in startups, they can work a few weeks or a few months. So through these opportunities, they can work with entrepreneurs and see what it's like firsthand to work in a startup. Aside from internship, another large area is competitions and student activities. Last year, We held 14 competitions, and there were some 2,500 students participating in the competitions. I mentioned there's a cyberport coding competition. So this was conducted in our financial year. We promoted this program in February, and we invited more than 1,000 students to do programming in a virtual world, and they built a future city. So we're very happy that in April this event was held. They received training, and they completed their project, and they established a world record. Initially, we were worried whether it would be possible to recruit 1,000 students, but we found that there is a large demand in society. We had received 1,000 applications very quickly, and their competence was very good. We provided 6 hours of online training and 2 hours of face-to-face training, and they were able to master coding skills. So aside from students, we also have industry participants. In Cyberport last year, we held 100 activities. We had IT seminars, training, sharing sessions. There were more than 10,000 participants. Just now I mentioned, the first step is to pique their interests. Of course, some people want to build their own startup. So we have different schemes to help them along the way. First, we have a micro creative fund. Every year, we have 2 recruitment drives. The winning teams will receive $100,000 fund for their startup project. Now, ever since we launched it, 120 projects received the subsidy, and last year we had granted 54 projects. So when these projects are completed, and if they feel that the outlook is promising and they want to build a business, they can join our incubation program. We have on-site and off-site incubation programs. On-site, they will get free office space. So whether it's on-site, off-site, they get 330,000 subsidy, and we have supported some 270 projects. Some 62% have operated for more than 3 years. And as of the end of 31st of March, so 190 businesses are still operating healthily. Last year, we had granted 51 new projects. So aside from these 2 schemes where we provide cash subsidies, we provide smart space. So for a lot of startup companies, they like to work in a common space. So through these platforms, they can meet up with other startups or other investors, and they can meet up with the relevant business partners. Now, I will go into further detail later regarding smart space. Just now, I talked about people who want to build a startup. When the startup has reached a certain stage, they either need to develop customers and a market, or they might need more investors to accelerate development. Last year, 21 companies where they achieved outstanding success, where they found investors, or they were acquired, or they received international awards or developed overseas markets. Usually, we partner with different elements. They bring new insight. For example, we work with Legend on cloud computing. In Cyberport, they have a cloud computing R&D center. It was just unveiled, and they recruit different professionals to develop cloud computing. Microsoft, we have a lot of partnership programs with them. We also have partnership with NetDragon on online education and online games. Aside from this, we also encourage Hong Kong companies where they've joined our training programs, and if they want to upgrade, they can join world-class incubator programs. For example, in Silicon Valley, in Beijing, Shanghai, there are very good platforms for them where they can connect with different partners across the globe, and they can expand their network. So a lot of companies have signed up for that as well. Up till now, we have 34 incubated companies where they received more than 300 million investment. Some 11 companies have been acquired, and 32 businesses have expanded their business beyond Hong Kong into the mainland and other markets. So this is a list of well-known companies that have received our training and sponsorship, such as GoGoVan, Dragon Law, and so on. Just now I talked about common space, a smart space. This is very popular in Hong Kong right now. In this Cyberport, we have 62,000 square feet, and we have expanded it to some 75,000 square feet. This is the largest in the world. More than 200 enterprises are operating and developing their products and services. The advantage of doing this is that we provide a very large platform for them to meet with other startups, investors, or other enterprises. If they need to look for startups, they know where to find them. There are a lot of facilities, a lot of flexibility, so it makes it easier for the startup. So basically, that would conclude my presentation. I hope we can have more time for interaction. Who would like to go first? I see Mok Lai Gong, Lo Wai Gok, Sin Zhong Kai. Anybody else? So 5 minutes each then. Mok Lai Gong. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I see in your Annex A you have provided a lot of supplementary information regarding the achievement of startups. Now, if I remember correctly, this is the first time you added this information. I think Hong Kong people, they would typically ask, well, what have you been doing? Have you helped? What kind of support have you provided with these startups? And I think that it's very good that Cyberport can provide this information. I hope the Science Park can provide similar information regarding the incubator program, so we can get a better feel. We can see that companies can garner investment and so on. My question will focus on CapEx. I understand that Hong Kong companies, startup companies, one of their major difficulties is financing. They might have very limited choices, or I think what we see here is successful companies. There are still a lot of companies that aren't on the list. So we see the Science Park, they have set aside 50 million to invite equity funds, private venture capital, to build a bigger fund to invest in the relevant companies. So I don't quite recall the projects when we met with Science Park. We had told them that they didn't have to make such a big distinction over geographical area, whether it's Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, or New Territories. Well, we should support them if it's based on merit. So So will you consider how to cooperate with them? Could you take some initiative there? I don't want to see fiefdoms being created where each party only supports one faction. So do you have any view in this regard? Will you do similar stuff to what the science park is doing? Will you consider cooperation? You don't need to make such clear distinctions. So it might be confusing for startups. If they join one, does it bar them from applying for a fund from the other side? Well, this is something they shouldn't be bothered with. They shouldn't have any misunderstanding. So could you smooth out the difficulties there? The arrangement of the science park, well, this is a new arrangement. We need to see how they're operating. My understanding, the fund will only be applied to the incubatees within Science Park. In Cyberport, they might not be able to apply for funds in Cyberport. But there is a lot of cooperation between Cyberport and Science Park regarding startups. The Cyberport, the funding is slightly different because we have the CCMF, where they have 100,000 for the prototype, but Science Park doesn't have that arrangement. So there is a slightly different approach. Today in Cyberport, we have not considered investing into the companies. The Science Park, they invest in the companies. So the scale is slightly different from Cyberport. But I won't rule out cooperation in the future. We need to wait for them to get running, and perhaps I can defer to Mrs. Lam regarding cooperation between Cyberport and Science Park. If you're talking about the 50 million investment, I had discussed with them, and I said, could we expand it a bit? We're looking into it. We need to explore further before reporting. I want to say that at a certain stage, these companies need funding. So how do we help find funding? That's something we need to think about. One thing we provide is the accelerator program. We see one efficient way is by joining these accelerators. A lot of people have signed up. A lot of people have invested there. So when you join an accelerator, our experience is that the chances of finding investors are much better. So we also have a cash subsidy. We can help them control costs. So overall speaking, we have different means to help them with funding. We have other schemes aside from the Science Park. Next, Mr. Lo Wai Kok.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since someone mentioned Science Park, may I declare interest? I am a member of the board of the Science Park, although there is no pecuniary interest involved. Regarding the IT Fest, I think it is quite a successful one, with various activities, and different organizations of the industry also took part in it. On the evening of the event Cyberport Youth Coding Jam 1000, I was one of the officiating guests, and I was impressed to see so many students engaged in coding. I hope we can have young people who believe that ICT is a worthwhile industry as well, and we will not so just heavily rely on financial services. Now, I have some specific questions to ask about the cyberport. First, regarding space available, I'd like to know whether there is still a space for further development. And because a portion is residential development or property development, I'd like to know whether there will still be more space available for tenants and users. And you have many share workspace, you have incubators, you have larger tenants to create a clustering effect, which is rather successful. And that is at least a step forward. But I think you still have a long way to go before we can promote the development of digital industry in Hong Kong, where you have seen some mergers and acquisitions, and you have seen new investments. I'd like to know the scientific or technological positioning of cyberport, or you just allow these companies to develop in whichever direction they prefer. Of course, we welcome autonomy and initiative, but will you have a few focus areas to promote in cyberport? Thank you. Mr. Lam. Thank you. First of all, we are grateful to Mr. Low for helping us with the Cyberport Youth Coding Gen 1000. The question on space. We have no expansion plan for the time being. But I think our actual services have go beyond the confines of our cyberport. So those programs don't necessarily have to be done at the cyberport. We have programs that are run outside cyberport, and we have started education and promotion in schools. So we still have a lot of room for development in this area. We want to encourage more companies to join our program. So we won't be confined by the physical space. And the second question is, other than winning awards and also encouraging investments, in the near future, we will focus on education. When people want to establish startups, we will give support, but we need more talents, we need more entrepreneurs, and we will achieve this by education. Coding 1000, GEM 1000 is a starting point. We have more such events to follow. My second question actually related to whether they have special areas for promotion within technology. Do you have any focal points, or do you just allow these companies to develop as in any direction as they like? We encourage diversity and plurality, and IT changes very quickly. Recently, we are more focused on the following three areas. When it comes to giving talks and experts, we focus on internet financial services, and wearable technology, and third, open data. These are the three areas where we focus on for the time being. We invite experts to share with us their experience and to provide training. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, I have a few questions on their accounts, income. I think it is in, Annex B, the third page of Annex B. Revenue and other income. In 2012, there was 1.8, last year 1.9, and this year about 2.21 billion. So I'd like to know why are they here? How come you still have this project income? $253 million. And then the balance sheets. There is an interest of, even though I have read Note 9, accumulated losses is close to $1.4 billion. And that is the rights or interests of shareholders. Footnote 9. All right. I will answer the second question. Accumulated losses, because we include all the assets of Cyberport, including our offices and assets. We have depreciation, and this is accumulated losses is in fact depreciation, and we of course will consider the market value, which is much higher than our book value. So we like to know our profits before depreciation. So is it in 2013-14, was it $10 million? $93 million. And of course, there was also money spent on our public mission programs. So the accumulated losses was due to higher depreciation. And how come we have got $252 million under project income? Perhaps I shall invite Ms. Wong to explain. Income from residential developments in 2013-14, it was $252 million. Every year we will have income credited into that asset. March 2015, $19.2 billion in dividends were given to the administration. That is already over the $7.9 billion injected by the government in the form of premium and other things. So this is dividends to the administration. Of course, I understand the source, but haven't you sold all the properties already? If you have, how come there is still income coming from your projects? CFO? Yes, all the properties have been sold. I think this is just the last installment of sharing. We will give you a written reply afterwards. Annex B, dividends. I think in 2012, the dividends was $1.5 billion. Sorry, because there was a lot of income from a rather profitable project. But this last year it was 1 point. Dividends last year or 2013 it was $162 million, and also 2014 210. How come the administration still required the Cyberport to give it more dividends? Can't you allow Cyberport to keep the money to spend more on public mission programs? Can't more money be kept by Cyberport for public mission programs? If I may, this item, dividends here, the accounts for residential development is separate from our accounts here. Public mission programs, belong to our commercial portion, and dividend from residential development is a separate set of accounts. The two are not mixed. Mr. Zin, your time is up. Perhaps you wait for your second round. Mr. Tan Yu-chung, to be followed by Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, Chairman. The incubation program. All right, you help them. You help startups. Meanwhile, will you help them? Will you help them or give them guidance on when they should cut loss and leave the market, so to speak, when a startup is not working well? Do you teach them at what point they should fold up their business and turn to other areas instead, so that they will not incur total loss? Yes, this is a very valid point. At a certain point, a startup may come to a bottleneck. Different companies have different situations due to the nature of their business and background. What we do is to ask different people to share with them their experience. We may provide mentors to advise them. But I don't think there is any formula to tell people at what point they should make what decision. We will try to provide as many sharing sessions as possible, and we can also connect them with experts so that they can consult these specialists when necessary. If you can help them to accumulate experience and learn from other experts, that's good. And there's a microfund. You told us that you only offer $100,000. In fact, they need more money to help them. Can you encourage market investment into startups, or do you have any platform for fundraising? Do you have any fundraising platform for these startups? Yes, this is very useful. In the market, different investors are now grouping together to form a few fundraising platforms, even in Hong Kong. Of course, the money may not necessarily come from Hong Kong, but elsewhere. We have a network to reach out to different markets and funds to build up connections for networking, so that our own entrepreneurs can also start quickly. The $100,000 is the seed funding for the project, and we also have an accelerator program. $300,000 is available to help them to reach out to different markets.
In Hong Kong, we have different investor platforms. We hold regular events. Our startups can introduce themselves, and a lot of them have found investors successfully through these events. So if you ask me, in the last 12 months, how many companies found money, it was much more than the previous 24 months. So the trend is positive and encouraging. Next, Mr. Leung Kok-hong. Well, Mr. Tam asked, do you have any advice telling them when they should withdraw, when they should quit? Mr. Lam? Barry, he started a commodities exchange, and that is related to IT. So he used IT as a platform to facilitate commodities trading. So why didn't you tell him when to quit? Why did you allow him to continue? He lost a lot of money. Mr. Tam Yu-chung asked whether there was advice for people telling them when to quit. Mr. Leung Kok-hong. Mr. Tam Yu-chung asked about startups, small companies, not this type of company. For a lot of startups, without a lot of experience, we provide training, we provide mentorship, and so on. In your document, you said that between 2008 and 2011, there were 22 enterprises out of 40, that is about 55%, that they are still operating. So how would you comment on that paragraph? They are operating, the program was running for 2 years. 40% of 40 companies, and 50% of them are still operating. But you don't have information regarding the scale of operations. So where can we find this information? You're referring to each company's operation details. You don't have information regarding operation scale. In our incubation program, there are 270 companies who have joined, and we have 190 odd still in operation. So we will follow up their progress, but this is a 2-year project. So after 2 years they graduate, and we don't spend a lot of effort on follow-up. So you just support them for 2 years? Well, when they are in our program, we will monitor them. Well, you don't follow up with them, and we can't ask you, and Chairman said that you have startups are very small companies, but you have to understand, Cyberport is a large project. And we have a large residential project. We have the Bel Air project. So you say you don't have information on certain items. So we're spending a lot of money on small startups, and they go belly up after 2 years, and you say some 45% don't operate more than 3 years. Is that accurate? Chairman, as I said, out of the 270 companies that joined our program, there are 190 odd still operating. So about a third have gone belly up, and between 2008 to 2011, slightly more than half were successful. So do you think that's a good achievement? In the incubation program, well, I don't have a lot of experience, so Mr. Lam has more experience, but my understanding is that the startups that were incubated, of course we would like them to succeed, but there is a chance of failure. So Mr. Tan, that's why Mr. Tan asked, do we provide advice on when they should quit? We need more communication. Well, we have success and failure. It's well, aside from watching a movie in Cyberport or going to dinner banquets, there's nothing else. Mr. Loigo, this is my second round of questioning. My question just now, Mr. Lam had answered very skillfully. He said that Cyberport cannot be expanded, but its scope of service had gone beyond Cyberport. So I want to ask the Secretary, Cyberport, of course it has its mission, it has successes and failures, startups, well, as an incubator, some will succeed, some will fail. Those who have succeeded have probably been able to go it on their own. We've heard of these, and of course there were failures, but I want to ask, no matter what, the industry wants to see sustainable growth in Cyberport. So has the government assessed do we have more expandable space for tenants? Have we used up the plot ratio? Is there any more space for expansion? Or perhaps can there be further development for Cyberport in other areas? Have you considered that? 3 minutes. Regarding the plot ratio, I think we've exhausted everything, but it can be dealt with flexibly. For example, in Cyberport, we have focused on office space in the recent years. We've changed to a more common space, a smart space. With a smaller area, you might be able to accommodate more small companies. So startups, all they need is an office. But when they grow, they might have to leave Cyberport. We don't need the companies to stay in Cyberport forever. Companies that have grown, they can go elsewhere to develop. So that's not something bad, having some turnover. But in the long term, if we need the same mode, could we replicate it in another location? Well, when we can identify that need, we can follow up. But as of today, the occupation rate is about 90%. We still have some space for tenants, and I feel that the operations are changing. In the past, we didn't have smart space. Now we have more smart space. So in the future, we might need to take our work outside. It's changing. So the government wants to have a pilot program, Park City. So will we have phase 2 of Cyberport? It's just something that you can explore. Mr. Mlung Sing, first round. Well, I think we will have some success. It's just a matter of how much success. Well, you want to develop globally, and some have already done so. They've ventured out. That's admirable. But for the grown-up companies, can they share their experiences? Well, to put simply, we've helped them, but we don't share the fruits. So when you ventured into this, have you considered that there should be some conditions for people using Cyberport when they succeed to a certain scale? There should be some profit sharing, or should the government even have dibs on shares? So they are using these facilities. They should return some of the profits that they generate. In our design, we do not require participating companies to give us shares or pay us back. So a lot of times, we assist them in the initial phase. We provide different forms of support to help them grow their business. Well, will they leave Hong Kong when they reach a certain size? That's possible, but we don't have a mandatory conditions to limit their growth. But when they develop in Hong Kong, we hope that we can retain them. In the IT business, there's no single market. There are many different markets. So when they develop in Hong Kong, it's probable that they might have branch offices in the rest of the world. So we do encourage them to bring the game up to a global level. Well, this is exactly where we need to focus. So when there are new opportunities, we should save these opportunities locally. But can we help them achieve global scale? The question now is that local opportunities can these be retained in Hong Kong, or are we out of control? We're just helping other people without any prospects on our part. So have you made any reference to your overseas counterparts where success or any sort of development, some of it can be retained locally? Well, the companies, we see the companies when they start business in Hong Kong, there are a lot of factors that encourage them to stay in Hong Kong. Do we need to constrain them? Well, we would rather be more open and attract more talent to our IT business. This is something we need to solve first. Those who participate in our project, they have to register in Hong Kong and have business in Hong Kong. Well, that's not hard to register and start in Hong Kong. But profit generation and research results, can Hong Kong benefit from that? I think that is something that deserves full and long-term consideration. Otherwise, we've just provided the incentives, but no prospects, no future prospects for us. I want to follow up on the financial questions. The dividend is based on real estate returns. Last year was 250 million. 210 million was given to the government and 40 million was taxed. So is the government policy, if there's no real estate return, then Cyberport, if there is a profit, it would be spent on incubation programs. The secretary, in the arrangement, when the Cyberport projects are completed, the money is collected by the Treasury. So the question, Mr. Sin's question was that why do we have income after the real estate project? We have maintenance expenditure, and when there's no need for that, it can be set aside. If I remember correctly, we have some car park spaces that were sold, so we still have income. So that's some residual income. The Cyberport company, as we mentioned just now, they have a public mission. They utilize rental income, hotel income to pay for that. So that was the operation principle. So when there are no more income streams, they will utilize their rental income to subsidize its operations.
That means after there is no more project income, there will be no more dividends to the government. Is that correct? Yes, all income in terms of dividends are plowed back into our treasury. Mr. Yu Siwing, I apologize for being late, Madam Chair. I don't know whether this question has been covered. And it's about the public commission programs. I can see that a number of programs have been organized to help young startups to enhance their learning, so on and so forth. In the tourism industry, we have the Chinese cuisine, School of Chinese Cuisine, to help young graduates to find jobs. So after they leave secondary school, they receive training in the School of Chinese Cuisine, and then the employment rate for them upon graduation is over 99%. So I'd like to ask whether similar arrangements are made by the Cyberport. In addition to internship program, will you set, say, targets for each program? For instance, you want to place a certain percentage of young people in this industry so that we can encourage people to take up this industry. Have you got such statistics? Mr. Lam? Currently, we do not go to schools to help them for career placement. We are providing different programs to spur young people's creativity and interest in ICT. We offer them opportunities to come into contact with the actual operation. Now, if they want employment, usually they have to further their studies in university or other institutions first. And I think these institutions can help them in job placement. Well, your training can be both passive and active. The Cyberport project has been in Hong Kong for so many years. Perhaps you should set targets for yourselves. Through this program, for instance, you intend to train a certain number of young people so that after further studies they can join this industry. Will you set up such targets for yourselves, or will you just continue with the current practice? So will you further consider my proposal? At present, we just want to encourage more young people to be interested in ICT. And if they are, we give them internship opportunities. Because you have been doing this for so many years, you should do something more specific. Will you make your program more professional? Well, our incubation program is mainly for companies. When it comes to a personal career placement of students, individual students, it is not in our plan yet. Will you consider doing this? Mr. Lam, Ms. Lam. Thank you. What the School of Chinese Cuisine doing is very different from what Cyberport is doing, because the school provides training and therefore it offers through training programs or services. It has to place as graduate in schools, whereas Cyberport is not a training institution. It helps startups and incubatees. But for students, ICT students, they will be given internship opportunities with Cyberport. But these students are not trained by Cyberport. And for the School of Chinese Cuisine, the knowledge and skills are more standardized, whereas for ICT there are so many different types. Now, if you want Cyberport to help students to find jobs, I don't think this is possible. Mr. To. According to this paper, the Cyberport nurtures companies, but you must have the right talents before they can apply for, say, microfund. If a person is not experienced enough, it would do him more harm than good if you lend him money. Since Cyberport has surplus and it has got space, then it's just a suggestion. Can you copy the practice of South Korea? Well, there they have powerhouses to allow students or even graduates to use if the schools do not offer them enough support and resources. It is a workshop for them, and they can have access to facilities there. I believe the Cyberport has a very strong foundation to do this, in addition to awards and also internship programs. Yes, internship programs are excellent, but before students have come to that stage, there must be several steps for them. So can Cyberport consider doing this? Mr. Lam, will you do more in the nurturing of young talents? Yes, it will be one of our priorities. We will engage in education. As I said, we go to different universities to promote our CCMF, and we also have camps that last for a few days, and people with different interests can make use of that opportunities to acquire information. And we also offer public space. If people need a platform, we do have space available for them. There are different projects and programs for young people. Young people may want to learn through our internship programs. They may need money from us, and we have several programs to offer them capital. And this space is also a forum for companies to pick people. It's also a place for networking and for people in different areas to share information and experience. I hope that this common space can be something regular. Yes, we will consider that. P.S. Just for your information, Chairman, there is a lot of flexibility when it comes to common space. you only pay $800 for a desk where you can have facilities. It's very affordable, and many young people, it's very popular among young people. And companies also go and pick talents there. Mr. Lo, any further thing to add? All right, second round, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, 3 minutes. Last question. Chairman, I want the administration to comment on this. Paragraph 3 of our electoral brief. The cyberport project comprises a cyberport portion and an ancillary residential portion. Should it be read this way? Bel Air comprises a commercial portion. You talked about that three very important elements. Now you have got a training program for students. 74 students took part in your internship programs, and then you had lots of festivals. And you've also got smart space that accommodates 263 enterprises, and then 34 companies got a total of $300 million in investment. 11 were either acquired or merged, and 32 developed their business overseas. But do you think this is a very brilliant report card? I don't think so. Because C.Y. Leung, our C, wants to set up the Innovation and Technology Bureau. So I'd like to ask you whether the Advisory Committee on Innovation and Technology has ever approached you to learn from you and to share your experience, or are you two entirely not in touch with one another? Can you let us know? P.S. Thank you. Our cyberport was set up in 2004, and in Annex A, we can see a list of successful startups. You can see that it takes time for enterprises to raise enough capital. When I talked with these enterprises, it took them some time to raise funds, and even longer for them to expand their business overseas. We would not consider the amount of investment we made. Cyberport have undertaken $300 million for its public mission programs, all because of our initial investment. And these startups and companies have won many international prizes. This is something very encouraging. So this advisory committee on INT has never approached Cyberport. Well, there used to be a steering committee chaired by the FS and chairman of Cyberport. Mr. Zhang Menyu is a member of that steering committee. I'm sure they had opportunities to exchange views. And Mr. Chow is still a member of the current advisory committee.
Okay, thank you. Next, agenda item number 5. So let's welcome the government officials regarding implementation of customer complaint settlement scheme for telecommunications industry on a long-term basis. Secretary. We want Cyberport to spend more effort on nurturing youth in the Cyberport project. We have Wang Zhouji, Zheng Jiho. We also have Professor Chen Chong Yip and officials from OFCA. So the representatives can provide a PowerPoint. Who will be taking us through the PowerPoint? Mr. Young. Thank you, Chairman. I will look at the background, the review, and the future direction. In the last few years, OFCA received consumer complaints. Billing ranked #1 in all the complaints. Other complaints were contract disputes and service quality disputes. Currently, the telecoms ordinance doesn't confer the authority to mediate between customer disputes. So when we have a complaint, they will refer back to the telecom provider to settle, and if it cannot be settled, it will have to be decided by the court, and it could be expensive. Therefore, after discussions with the telecom industry, the OFCA supported a voluntary customer complaint scheme to deal with complaint stalemate through mediation. All the telecom providers have joined. The mediation is a independent center set up with by the Mediations Association. The OFCA had provided support to the scheme, including footing the bill according to the cases, the management, the monitoring. The cases can be divided into individual or residential cases. The dispute in case has to be more than $300, and there has to be a stalemate. That is, they have been in more than 6 weeks of discussion but cannot resolve the case. So consumers and the telecom service provider, the consumer has to pay $100 and the company has to pay $200 as a mediation fee. The trial scheme had ended on 31st of October last year. In the 2-year trial period, we had received 357 eligible cases. In the first year, there were 106 cases. In the second year, there were 251 cases. So out of the 357 cases, 71% they heard about it through the website and the consumer hotline, and another 16% knew of the service through the CCSS members. There were also referrals through the hotline 1823. The complaints were about roaming mobile services, roaming data services. The dispute ranged from $300 to $150,000, and on average, it was $4,500, $4,100. In the 357 cases, aside from one case where there was a verbal agreement and a written agreement was not signed and there was no follow-up, all other cases they were able to resolve the differences through mediation and further mediation. 159 cases had already been settled before referral to the mediation center. 71 cases, after being referred to the mediation center, they were resolved by the service provider, and there were 127 cases that were resolved successfully after mediation. Generally speaking, the telecom service provider and the consumer were willing to share the cost. So that might imply that both parties might have been at fault, and that was why they were willing to settle. In evaluating our program, we had three principles in mind. First of all, the case feedback, that is, we saw that callback rate was falling, and there was a 3% drop from 6% to 3%. And the successful cases, the settlement rate, we saw that almost 100% was successful in mediation. And third, we have a satisfaction survey. Consumers that participated in the survey, consumers and telecom service providers that participated in the scheme, they had to fill in the satisfaction survey. The survey elements included whether the center staff had provided informative responses, and whether the time spent on resolution was reasonable. So we saw that the consumers and IS and telecom service providers, they returned a score between 4.6 and 4.7, so that indicated satisfaction. So overall speaking, OFCA feels that this is a very useful service in dealing with stalemates regarding billing disputes. Regarding the mediation center, the OFCA has set some KPIs to assess their performance. These include various aspects, including the workflow, handling of complaints, handing reports and statistics to OFCA. Overall speaking, the center was able to meet all the key performance indicators. We feel that the center was operating smoothly and effectively. Regarding long-term implementation, the OFCA had surveyed the telecom providers. Their response was very positive. They felt that the scheme could help them, and agreed that under subsidy by the OFCA, that they would participate voluntarily on a long-term basis. They felt that the scope and responsibilities should not change. Now, since the results were very satisfactory, and we had almost 100% of eligible cases being resolved successfully, plus telecom service providers and users do have a need for the scheme, and positive feedback from service providers, OFCA has decided to implement the scheme on a long-term basis. So the scheme has been implemented on 1st of May 2015. OFCA will provide more education in the future, such that the public have better awareness and more people can benefit from the scheme. We will monitor the efficacy, and we will review at regular periods. That concludes my presentation. So let's start with 4 minutes each. Well, first of all, I have to thank the Telecom Association for undertaking this work, because as the document says, Cap 106 Telecom Ordinance does not authorize the OFCA to intervene with disputes, billing disputes between telecom operators and consumers. It is shocking to lay people when they hear that the telecom ordinance doesn't authorize them to deal with disputes. Well, first of all, this ordinance, other areas of the ordinance needs amendment, but the government's stance might be that let's wait till the telecom and broadcast ordinance are merged. So it's been in negotiation for more than a year or two, and we haven't set a date yet. So we don't know what we're waiting for. That's the first question. Can we have some progress before the merging of the Telecom and Broadcasting Ordinance? Can you intervene earlier? Second, the Telecom Industry Association, they have worked on this issue pro bono. They have put the bill, but the OFCA has an operation fund, but they have to rely on the industry to resolve these problems. And then we hear that the OFCA has decided to lend its support. But I don't see what you have done. You are relying solely on the industry. You're just saying, but I think the responsibility should rest with the OFCA. So shouldn't you shoulder a larger responsibility? We should not rely solely on the industry. So, or you might even consider footing some of the bill. In paragraph 5, we say that the OFCA supports the CCSS by contributing necessary funding and monitoring the performance. Mr. Mok also asked about the legislation. Actually, in our regulatory legislation, the whole principle is minimal interference. We call it a light-handed regulatory approach. And we see that in the telecom industry, aside from important issues, we prefer self-regulation, and the industry is willing to do so. In different eras, we had different codes of practice. So on this occasion, we started negotiations in 2010, and now it seems that self-regulatory approach has brought about a drop in complaint numbers. So the framework is not bad. Next, Mr. Tan Ji-shun. Well, having the scheme is better than nothing. At least there's a place where you can complain to. In the past, you'd have to write to magazines. If the company was afraid of bad press, they would compromise. But now there's nothing to be afraid of. They're always in the top 3 of complaint targets. You say that they have satisfaction rating of 4.6, 4.7, and almost 100% successful resolution. Well, you received 357 complaints. Do you have any? Do you have any targets? Is that a lot? Or is that number of complaints a lot, or not? Because magazines receive dozens of complaints every month, and in this scheme, you see that people who knew about the scheme, 42% were from the website, 29% from the website. So it seems that the OFCA is very concerned. The telecom service providers do not promote this information. So how will OFCA promote awareness? Well, the telecom service providers, they want to provide, they want to build an image that they are cooperative, but they are not actively promoting awareness programs. So in the future, will you ask the telecom service providers to educate their customers? And regarding funding, we don't have figures on funding. Do we have figures on funding?
the total funding. Anyone from the team? Mr. Lau? Whether the OFCA thinks that 357 cases is a good figure. Well, last year we received 1,049 cases on billing disputes, or 2,000 together in 2 years. We're dealing with about 3,057 cases, and the percentage is rather high. 357 out of 2,000, the percentage should be almost 17%. And Mr. Chen asked, I said that the operators do not promote the program. This is because in the past 2 years it was just a trial scheme. So you adopted a low-profile approach. No, we were not no profile. You weren't, but those service providers were. No, because we're not sure whether the scheme would become permanent. We were not sure whether it would work or not. But we have completed a trial scheme. The service providers like the scheme, and at the score of 4 odd. They were not just rated by the members, but customers as well. So the scheme has been rather successful. So as I said, we are going to step up publicity in the relevant websites so that complainants know where to complain. What about the total amount of funding, sponsorship? Because our funding includes the rental of premises, so it is about $2 million per year, $4 million 2 years, but we have so far spent $3 million for that scheme, so the cost should be about $1.5 million per year. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, billing disputes and contractual disputes. Table 1. I think the trend for these two kinds of disputes are rather similar. Given the success of the scheme, OFCA should publicize the scheme. Can you promote this to organizations such as cable TV? Now, cable TV, a certain customer held somebody at night at gunpoint. He was already at cable TV building, and then he was still talking with the staff on phone. Now, if that accused was aware of the scheme, if he had used it, he would not be in jail now. I hope the scheme was really as successful as you claim. So, Ms. Ho, do you intend to include cable TV? I was once set framed, and I asked the cable TV to sue me. Of course, it didn't. All right, will you deal with broadcasting service providers as well? No, I'm being sincere. You have accumulated valuable experience from the scheme. If the person who is in jail now was made aware of this program, all he needed was to spend $100 because he had to ride the taxi there. He took with him a gun, and then he held several people at knife point, and then one was hurt, and he is now jailed. So perhaps you should extend this scheme to cover our paid TV service providers as well. What are they called? Or for sports centers, leave them aside first. So are you done, Mr. Leung? Yes. All right. P.S. For complaints against pay TV or broadcasting, OFCA has another mechanism to handle them. I believe the mechanism for handling complaints is now improved. And Mr. You mentioned a particular unit or organization. Now it is quite easy to terminate a contract with the service provider. You can do so on the internet. I beg to differ. Perhaps you haven't got the experience. 357 cases out of 2,000 odd cases. That means with your intervention, the companies would be not so tough in their stance. I once owed the company some money, and it harassed me by calling me. I said, it threatened to sue me. I said, yeah, do so. My name is Leung Kwok Hong. So can you expand the scheme? I think the crux of the matter is as soon as you intervene, many cases are really resolved, and even if they finally resorted to mediation, the success rate was very high. Mr. Lam, perhaps the paid TV sector doesn't have such a generous association willing to help. Ms. Ho, we'll see whether a self-regulatory mechanism is also needed for the sector. It's okay, even if you charge $500. I think people are willing to pay $500. Yes, your view was noted, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Next, Mr. Lo Wai Kok. If you look at the total number of complaints, well, there's an obvious drop in the past 3 years from 5,000 odd cases in 2012 to 4,300 odd in 2013 and 3,400 odd in 2014. There may be a few possibilities. Complainants or consumers are more and more satisfied with service providers, and therefore they do not complain. Or secondly, perhaps the complaint mechanism was not really successful, and consumers would rather not complain. But I think the former reason may be more likely. You gave us findings of a satisfaction survey, but what about the sample size? Were those scores given by the 300 odd service users? Second, cases that were settled before mediation. According to your paper, these cases were satisfactorily settled before mediation, or in some cases, service providers took the initiative to settle the cases with complainant first. Is that the case? So for cases that were settled prior to mediation, I think we can get some observations from that. And we have also seen a marked decline in the number of complaints on service quality. And for contractual disputes, the number dropped to 1/3 in these 3 years. Perhaps it is because the service providers have improved their services substantially. Starting from the 1st of May, you are going to make this scheme permanent. We welcome that. Rather than for OFCA to continue to sponsor the program, because this is about service quality and consumers' satisfaction, is it reasonable to ask OFCA to use public money to subsidize the mechanism permanently? And what about the annual expenditure? Perhaps I didn't catch it when you told us. For scores by those 3,057 cases, I think that question needs to be answered by OFCA. And OFCA got its funds from the market, because it is a trading fund, and the money is from the service providers, and this money is spent on sponsoring the scheme. So I think this is a fair arrangement, and the annual expenditure of the scheme is about $1.5 to $2 million per year, covering rent. The number of complaints is one indicator, but we should not forget that we have 17 million odd mobile service users. Well, in 2014, the actual number of complaints was not really that big. Mr. Lau? Speakers off mic. Take 198. So this 198 cases that went through mediation were covered in the satisfaction survey. Mr. Low asked about the reduction in the number of complaints against contractual disputes. Because starting from 2012, the industry has launched a code of practice launched by the industry itself, because prior to 2012, many contracts were far from clear and there were issues, and OFCA, together with the industry, formulated a code of practice. Indeed, with the code of practice, while I would not attribute everything to that code of practice, but we have seen a big drop in the number of complaints against the subjects. So what they have been doing and our publicity have paid off. OFCA has, in our APIs, asked members of the public to be careful in using their mobile devices for browsing the web, and we also asked them to check their bills carefully. I think a series of efforts have paid off, and that has resulted in the number of complaints against contractual disputes. Ms. Sit-ho, yes, it is good if API sends out such message. It will help consumers to save money. But I think I have seen an API, it didn't teach consumers as to how they could complain. For people who learned about this scheme from OFCA's website and API, they accounted for 71%, and not too many complainants got information through CCSS members' websites. And as soon as the complaint mechanism was activated, many of the cases were already settled. I believe it was not consumers who withdrew their complaints, rather because of your intervention, the service providers dare not bully consumers anymore. And Table 1, you've got billing disputes, contractual disputes, and service quality. Others would mean cold call, telemarketing, so on and so forth. Although we've seen a substantial drop in the number of complaints, have things really improved? We don't know. Because we might have got used to receiving such calls, and it's also not so easy to make a complaint, because according to reports, some of the phones originate from outside Hong Kong.
So this type of nuisance marketing, how much does it make up in the 663 cases? Even though we have a privacy protection and sales and marketing cannot abuse consumer phone numbers. Well, it seems that they have bypassed this by randomly calling consumers. So could you provide us with some statistics? How many are harassing marketing calls in the 663 complaints that you received? I will respond to the person-to-person direct marketing. OFCA can respond in greater detail. In face-to-face phone calls, we had explained in January, we are conducting a survey through a consultant company. We want to grasp the latest situation, including public opinion, industry opinion on the regulatory framework. Because phone calls might originate from Hong Kong and overseas, and we see that there is a lot of employment generated through this type of activity. So we hope by the end of the year we can conclude our survey and report back to you regarding marketing phone calls. Now, regarding the 663 complaints, what is the breakdown? 2% are harassing calls. Is it 2% of the 3,427? It's 100 odd calls. It's about 70 odd. It's 50 odd. Well, Chairman, I hope that the OFCA and authorities can conclude the study, because even though the complaints are coming down, but I think everybody here has an experience. When you're in the middle of a meeting, you'll get a call, and you thought it was a call from a colleague, but then it turned out to be someone asking you whether you need a loan. So when you receive one of these harassing calls in the midst of important business, even though it creates some employment, but when these people are a harassment to other people, it's questionable whether we should support this type of economic activity. Yes, when we return back this year, we hope that we have some substantial material to report after the middle of the year, because we still need to conduct analysis. Well, Chairman, I also want to. Well, Chairman, you said that it creates job opportunities. Well, business people won't work without return. But how many? But you are digressing, Ms. Ho. Well, I need to know. When we strike a balance, we don't want this type of economic activity. We want to know how much business this activity generates. Ms. Zhang Laiwan. Chairman, I have two questions. The first, in paragraph 3, the government says that the Telecoms Ordinance does not confer the authority statutory power to intervene in billing disputes. If that is the case, are there cases of the telecom service providers breaching the law? If that is the case, will the authority intervene? I also want to know in paragraph 8D, there are 357 eligible cases, and 159 were settled, and 198 were referred to the CCSS for mediation service. But then 71 were settled before mediation. And 126 out of 127 were satisfactorily settled. Well, we have 357 cases that were ignored, but after they launched a complaint, it was referred to the CCSS, and immediately 159 cases were settled. And then when mediation started, and then 71 were settled before mediation. So, and then 126 out of the 127 were satisfactorily settled. So what is the percentage of cases that were the responsibility of the telecom service provider? How many did they waive the charges? Just now, Ms. Chung, the cases you referred to, well, our scheme allowed the complainant and service provider to reach an agreement. A lot of times the dispute, it's hard to identify who's right, who's wrong. But the purpose of the scheme allows them to reach a settlement. And of course, that is a benefit. You're saying how many were the fault of the service provider? Well, we don't look at the details because even cases that needed mediation, some were the fault of the operator, some were the fault of the consumer. And of the 71 cases, both parties were to blame, but the scheme allowed them to reach a settlement. Well, my question is, coming back to paragraph 3, the authority does not have the statutory power to intervene in billing disputes. So how can you help consumers? Can you assist them in taking the case to court? Well, since we don't have statutory power, we have to rely on this voluntary scheme. The OFCA has already done what it can do, given we have no statutory power. Well, consumers also have the right to do this. They don't need OFCA to help them. The OFCA does not have a responsibility to help consumers go to court. I have to apologize for not reading the document carefully. You had said AFCA had provided funding, but I want to follow up on Ms. Ho's question. You only handle telecoms complaints. You don't deal with cosmetic surgery complaints. For example. So I just want you to clarify that. Otherwise, it would increase your workload. I want to ask Professor Chan. You said that the OFCA is taking a light-handed approach. Just now I mentioned the OFCA has no statutory power to intervene. So I want to hear from the industry, which is better in the long term? Should we authorized OFCA statutory powers or not? We are just focusing on telecom billing disputes, and we're not talking about what we're regarding legislation. Now, even though I'm not representing OFCA, but telecom is part of the in Hong Kong industry, and if there is a billing dispute, and if you want to look up the relevant legislation, this is not just limited to telecom industry. Mr. Chan, Professor Chan. Before the scheme, if consumers had billing disputes, they could rely on mediation. Usually the consumer owes the telecom service provider money. They could go to a small claims court, and outcome would be one party being dissatisfied. But the mediation creates a triple win. We see that in the majority of cases, they are happy. They even spend more money with the telecom provider, and the telecom is happy because they can retain the customer. Well, should we allow the OFCA to mediate? I think in 2011 we had this voluntary code of practice scheme. It was very good. We saw the complaints drop, and even face-to-face sales, we do have a code of practice. You cannot harass a consumer after certain hours. So, regarding these regulatory framework, it's very positive. I feel that this spirit should be repeated in other industries as well. So I can also explain in the first couple of years, the service providers weren't very proactive in promoting this. So there is a cost. Was it cost efficient? But after trial and before mediation, the service provider was very willing to settle the matter over the phone. The second do they have to bear the cost after the scheme ends, after the pilot ends? I believe they will promote awareness if the OFCA is willing to foot the bill. Well, I feel this scheme is very successful. You should promote it vigorously. The scheme only started in 2012, and it's only going to take. It's going to be permanent after 1st of May this year. We see a lot of complaints in the past. The largest controversy is data charges. So I hope that there can be more awareness programs. 42% of consumers are aware of this through a website. So either that or you refer more cases from the telecoms to CCSS. Well, I have one question. I see the consumer console. There are only 19 channels and you have 1,049 cases. So were there cases that went directly to the consumer console? If they went to the consumer console, will they refer cases back to you? The consumer console have been liaising with us. We had requested them to remind consumers of this scheme. There's no referral mechanism, but But we had reminded the Consumer Council when they come across these cases, they should tell the consumers that there is this settlement scheme. Because you see in 2014, there are 3,427 number of consumer complaints. But how many complaints did Consumer Council receive? More than 1,000 per year. But some cases are referred to us, but some are handled by them. So the total should be some 4,000 odd, and some are repeat.
The Consumer Council is also funded by public money. Now, if your scheme is so successful, then you should coordinate with the Consumer Council better. Ask them to relay billing dispute cases to you so there will be no duplication of efforts. We've already invited consumer councils to pass as many cases to us as possible. All right, PS, do you think this arrangement will be more appropriate? Now, if this scheme is successful, perhaps all billing dispute-related cases can be dealt with here. Yes, there should be spirits of cooperation and no duplication of efforts. All right. We end this agenda item here. Item 6, AOB, none. Thank you very much for your attendance. Do we have AOB? If not, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.